You ever come across one of those questions that's so simple, so completely absurd, that you just have to know the answer? Well, we've got a great one for you today. So, yeah, that's the question. Just picture it for a second. All the power, all the fury of one of the world's most massive waterfalls, forced through one of those little plastic straws you get with a soda. What do you think would happen? Well, the short answer is you'd be in a lot of trouble, but not for the reason you think. Before you even get to the physics, you'd be absolutely buried in phone calls and angry letters from a whole bunch of committees with very, very long names. It would be a bureaucratic nightmare. Right. There's also that. That one little detail. Besides upsetting a lot of people in suits, you would also, completely annihilate the planet. So how on earth do we get from a tiny straw to the end of the world? Let's get into it. Okay, first things first. Let's pull back from the crazy sci-fi stuff and ask, what would actually happen if you tried this tomorrow in the real world without any magic involved? I mean, at the risk of stating the painfully obvious, the water's just not going to fit. It is the definition of a square peg in a round hole, except the peg is a raging torrent of water and the hole is comically small. So, if you were to actually try it, here's how it would go down. You'd have to build this massive dam, right, to channel all the water towards your little straw. And for a second, a tiny, sad little trickle of water would probably go through it, but the rest of that massive river, it would just start backing up until it spilled right over the top of your dam, completely ignoring your ridiculous invention. So, pretty boring, right? But that's reality for you. But why? Why can't you just push it harder? Well, this is where the laws of physics basically show up and just say, nope, not happening. Turns out there are some very real, very hard limits on this kind of thing. The first big hurdle is something called choked flow. The best way to think about it is like a traffic jam, but for water. As you squeeze the water into a smaller pipe, it speeds up, sure, but only to a certain point. After that, it doesn't matter how hard you push from behind, the flow is choked. You literally can't get any more water through per second. It's a physical bottleneck. Now, if you keep trying to push past that limit, something even crazier and way more destructive happens. It's called cavitation. And this is a truly bizarre phenomenon where the water starts to boil itself, not from heat, but from pure speed. Okay, so here's how that works. As the water gets forced through that tiny opening, its speed goes through the roof. And a weird rule in physics says that as the speed goes way up, the pressure inside the water goes way down. If it drops low enough, the water actually boils, even though it's cold, forming these tiny bubbles of steam. But here's the kicker. The moment they form, they instantly collapse, imploding with enough force to literally shred solid steel. This process would tear our little straw and any normal pipe to ribbons. And just to give you some scale here, some back-of-the-napkin maps suggest the absolute smallest pipe you could use for Niagara Falls before cavitation would tear it apart is about 10 meters wide. That's over 30 feet. We're talking about a 7-millimeter straw. So yeah, we're not even in the same ballpark. All right, so reality says no. Physics says no. But you know what? This is a thought experiment. So for the fun of it, let's just ignore them. Let's pretend we have a magic, indestructible straw and an infinitely powerful pump. If we could force all that water through, just how fast would it be going? First, we need our key number. And what's wild is that this is actually set by law. A 1950 international treaty says that to keep the falls looking pretty for tourists, the flow can't drop below 100,000 cubic feet of water every single second. That's the amount we have to squeeze through our straw. And this is where the scale of the problem just becomes insane. We're taking enough water to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool in less than a second and trying to cram it through an opening about the width of a pencil. The math itself is pretty straightforward. You just divide that massive flow rate by the tiny area of the straw. The answer you get, though, is anything but straightforward. In order to get 100,000 cubic feet of water through that 7-milliliter opening every second, the water would have to be moving at, get this, 1/4 the speed of light. Let that sink in. We're talking about 75 million meters per second. At this point, this isn't a plumbing problem anymore. We have accidentally stumbled into the world of relativistic physics. So what happens when a jet of water starts moving at a significant chunk of the speed of light? Well, as you can probably guess, it sets off a chain reaction that is not great for all the living things on planet Earth. At these kinds of insane speeds, all those other concepts like choked flow and cavitation, they're totally irrelevant. They're quaint. The kinetic energy is so high that the water molecules don't just bounce off each other. They smash into each other and completely disintegrate. The atoms themselves are torn apart. It's not water anymore. What's shooting out of your straw is plasma, a superheated soup of atomic particles. And the amount of energy we're talking about is just staggering. This quote really puts it into perspective. The jet of plasma coming out of our straw would be releasing more power every second than all of the sunlight hitting the entire planet combined. So let's just lay out the endgame here. You've turned a waterfall into a particle accelerator. It's now putting out the same amount of energy as a small star. The sheer heat and light from this thing would start to boil away the oceans, scorch the continents, and make the entire planet completely uninhabitable. And in that scenario, you would be in very, very big trouble with the International Niagara Committee. I mean, I have to think that destroying the planet is a major violation of that 1950 treaty. They would be so disappointed. And that's where we'll leave it. It is just amazing how a simple, silly what if can spiral from a paperwork problem into a world-ending catastrophe. It really makes you wonder what other innocent-sounding questions out there have absolutely insane answers. Thanks for joining me on this one.